Well, hello then, I do hope you're all well. Now in this video, Labour MP for Oldham East and Saddleworth, Debbie Abrahams, asked Minister of State for Disabled People, Work and Health, Chloe Smith, this controversial DWP Cruels assessments, is it really fit for purpose? But before Debbie Abrahams asked this question, she quoted some damning and powerful statistics. Also, at the end, if you're from a couple of European countries, I think she mentioned Netherlands, but especially Scotland, you'll be wearing a grin the size of Bournemouth when you hear her last question.
Debbie Abrahams.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. We've heard, in terms of the evidence that's been submitted to the committee, in terms of the issues that the health assessment process, both work capability assessment and PIP, has. We've also heard from academics in terms of the real issues that there are with both of those health assessments. And if you think about the data, which I think we've discussed before, certainly I have with the Secretary of State, around the number of people who are dying after being found fit for work, 274 a month. Back in 2019, it may have changed since then. And then similarly for PIP, people who've been refused PIP, 60 dying within 6 months.
Shit, that's a lot, innit? Shouldn't be any people like that. That's shocking.
Heard from Professor Barr in terms of when people were being reassessed between 2010 and 2013, 6,000 additional suicides. It is quite clear from that stark evidence, as well as the qualitative evidence that we've seen, that the system isn't working. It is not fit for purpose. In fact, it's actually doing harm. So I wondered whether that is the conclusion that you've also reached.
No shit, Sherlock. I don't think you'll win Private Investigator of the Year for that assessment. Clearly it isn't working.
I really welcome you asking these questions, Debbie, and the evidence that has been submitted to this committee, because it shines a light on a very, very important area, and I wanted to discuss it with you very, very seriously this morning. I know we would all agree that it is always tragic when a person dies, and in this context, when that occurs, having been in receipt of benefits or in contact with our department. And I think we are extremely conscious, both as ministers and as supporting officials, that people interact with this department at some of the most challenging moments in their lives, often in very difficult circumstances. So it is absolutely incumbent on us to do everything we can to make sure that those interactions are well supported and that we get them right.
Spoken like a true Tory ideologue.
For us, this means learning lessons when we could have done things better, and then continually improving what we do. And we think that some of the most important ways of doing that are about how we identify and support people who are most vulnerable.
Surprised you didn't put in the word robust in there.
If it's of help to the committee, I'd quite like to start here by talking about some of the ways in which we have done that, because that then gives rise to, I hope, better outcomes and better results.
Because obviously you gave some detail about the improvements you've made since 2018, so if you could just pick up on the key ones, that'd be great.
Well, actually, they're in addition to those points that I made at the beginning of the committee. They're in a more specialised field, if you like. What I'm talking about is the way that we've improved the service that we give to people with mental health conditions, and that includes mandatory mental health training for all new DWP telephony staff before they begin to handle calls from claimants. We are encouraging our staff to signpost most vulnerable claimants towards support, and to ensure that chances to flag concerns to agencies with statutory safeguarding responsibilities are not missed. That is, of course, essential. We are ensuring that every job centre has a complex needs toolkit containing links to other local organisations who may be able to help and to provide support. We're delivering wider training to all work coaches and also child maintenance staff to raise their awareness of related issues such as domestic abuse. We've got a programme of advanced customer support senior leaders, and there are now more than 30 of those across Great Britain, and their remit is to reach across local communities to ensure that we've got the right relationships and the right links with local organisations that again can provide support to our customers. And overall, as I think the committee will be aware, we've created a customer experience directorate focused on learning, and with a team in itself focused on supporting our most vulnerable customers. That directorate then links to the work that you are aware of in terms of how we run our internal process reviews and the serious case panel.
Thank you. That's, and I've heard a lot of that before, and yet when we had the Secretary of State here a few weeks ago, just after that data was published in terms of the 140 deaths that are being investigated by the department over the last 3 years, and this has increased, and obviously this is just the tip of the iceberg, because from what I understand, the department itself isn't collecting and understanding the full scale of the deaths and the causes. But if we just focus on the health assessment processes, I mean, one of the things that the academics who we had to the committee last month focused on was that there are fundamental flaws in terms of how the health assessments have been designed, structural flaws in that process which are inherently negative in terms of the impact that they have on the customers, as you call them, claimants, human beings, vulnerable human beings that go through this process, and indicated that they may not have some of the claimants, disabled claimants that go through, may not have mental health problems before they go through the process, but there is an increased risk of them developing them as a result of going through the health assessment process.
She's hit on something really, really important. Their view, Chloe Smith's viewing them as customers. They're not customers. They're people. They are human beings who are struggling through life. They are not customers. Absolutely spot on, and it's not something I picked up until she said so. I think she's absolutely spot on there. They just view them as customers. That's, I suppose, anyway, what an ideologue thinks that way, I suppose.
I could just mention very briefly, Chair, Professor Dr. Geiger has said that the work capability assessment does not assess people's capability for work. It is set up to assess the genuineness of someone's impairment, but it does it without any transparency or any evidence base about the situations in which it overrules people's accounts of their own lives. So it's inherently calling people out in terms of, you're saying this, but we don't think that. So it builds up this conflict just by how it's designed. And he mentions a similar thing around PIP. PIP's meant to be there to provide additional financial support, recognising the additional costs that disabled people face, but it doesn't do that. There's again evidence, academic evidence, that it actually is driving people into poverty, although I understand what you're saying, that more people are in receipt of support because we are an older population, and that's going to happen, unfortunately. So on this basis, and this is something obviously the committee has got to determine, there is clear indications that the process itself is fundamentally flawed. So what are you going to do about it? Is this being addressed within the pilots that you have going in Birmingham and elsewhere?
It's a very, very good question, and I acknowledge all those arguments, and again have taken time to reflect on the evidence that this committee has had from the academics and from other sources as well. And indeed, this is, of course, something that I've spent time meeting with people and listening to. So, for example, Rethink Mental Illness is an organisation that I've had a very similar discussion with on the back of reports that they've published recently. The themes that you allude to, Debbie, are ones that we're going to be able to say a lot more on in the white paper, because, as we said in the green paper, we want to be able to improve our assessment processes, of course, so that people have greater trust in them, and we think there's a number of things we can do to increase the transparency, some of which we've touched upon this morning, and as I say, we'll be able to bring forward more detail on that in the white paper. But fundamentally, we want to be able to get people the support that they need in a non-conflict, without it being in a situation of conflict or a situation of stress. Just as you described, Debbie, we don't want that any more than anybody else wants that. So we will be able to say more on the overall system improvements that we're looking to make in the white paper. We can also, though, make improvements before we get to any stage of reform, and we're doing that through the work of the Serious Case Panel, which Katie sits on and may be able to add some more details on in terms of what we're doing right now to improve things.
Thank you, Minister. I'd be happy to add.
Briefly, if you would. I've just got one more little one after that. But
Yeah, thank you. So the department has a serious case panel, as the Minister has described, attended by the Permanent Secretary and all of the Directors General in the department, and chaired by one of our non-executive directors. And we're looking at the system right now and at changes we can make. And some of the things that the Minister has described have come through that panel. But I would probably just emphasise one that is particularly important and relevant to us, which is around stopping payments. So we have made changes to the way that decisions are made on stopping payments, and we have these new, the Minister's described them, advanced customer support senior leaders, and they have a real role to play, joining up with the police, joining up with social services, and supporting customers in order that we make the right decisions.
Thank you. So, final question, Chair, if I may. The UK is an outlier in terms of health assessments, according to these academics who have done a huge amount in terms of comparable assessments and analyses. And the quote that stuck out to me is, the UK system stands out as being particularly bad, causing particular distress. When we're looking at alternative models, the Danish and the Dutch model have been mentioned, very, very different. I think it's the Danish one that provides a wraparound service, it's a very holistic approach, and that would need some investment, but it's looking at the whole person and takes, as I say, that sort of, whereas the Dutch one is more recognising that assessing people in relation to work roles. Are they being considered? And then, if I may, in terms of the Scottish model, when we visited, we were really, really impressed in terms of the pilot that's going on there, and particularly a fundamental objective of that system for the new adult disability payment is around developing trust between the claimant and the assessor. And that is something that is actually asked. Did you feel that you were treated kindly after going through the assessment? Now this is what we should be trying to do, don't you think?
All my Scottish subscribers who watch this, they'll be sat there listening or watching this with the biggest shit-eating grin you will ever see today.
There are a number of there are always important lessons to learn from other countries and other systems, and there's actually many ways in which I'm working really closely with my counterparts in the Scottish Government on the case transfer, and then also on other ways that we are serving our shared citizens, because of course it's a transitional scheme for now, but even after that particular benefit is fully devolved, there will continue to be ways in which we have to work together for the very same people. But just on the international side, if I may, there's a great deal of work going on to share experiences with other countries in terms of how we support disabled people, not only through health assessments, but actually on a broad range of points, of course. And I had the chance to do more of this when I was at the United Nations in terms of the Conference of State Parties on the UN CRPD just in June, and actually Denmark is a country where we'll be following up, and others besides. not just, as I say, on health assessments, but also, for example, on how we do occupational health, how we support people to start and stay and succeed in work, and a range of other things besides to best support disabled people.
Okay, so you are actively working with your Scottish counterparts, yes, and that would be interesting if perhaps we could have a note in terms of the practicalities of that.
Awesome.
So thank you
very much.
Still grin in Scotland? No, I shall be as brief as I possibly can with this video, because it's probably gone on long enough. But when Debbie Abrahams mentioned those suicide statistics, I didn't hear much empathy from Chloe Smith. It would just go through the conservative, spiel and nonsense and all that stuff. And I'm surprised she didn't mention the word robust. And yes, we must learn our lessons and all that nonsense. And also, in calling them customers, I think that just sums up where she is when it comes to in the Tory party. That's the Tory way, innit? Just view people as customers. We're not. We are human beings. And when you are going for assessment, like, you need extra help. And quite clearly, these assessments, they are not fit for purpose, are they? Right, anyway. As I said, this video's gone long enough, but I do hope you enjoyed it. And until the next time, I shall bid you farewell and take care.